So, hey everyone, welcome back to Moonshot House and our fireside chats. This is our, it's our fourth in the series, fifth in the series. I don't know. I'm losing track. That's how exciting it's getting. So, we. For those of you who don't know what House is, and you're just joining us for the first time, I want to give you a little bit of an overview. It's a division of Create New Ventures, which is an exclusive invite-only virtual community for financial institutions, venture capital firms, hedge funds, LPs, angel investors, industry leaders, and innovative minds. That's my favorite part. Our mission is accelerating trust between the leaders in the private sector, opening up a world of opportunities for our community, and building a platform enabling our members to virtually stay connected during and after the pandemic. As a group, we not only do we revolutionize, standardize, and democratize the private sector, but we also support the talents, innovations, and inventions to shape the future through collaboration, engagement, and the right direction. This is still a beta version, so your input is extremely important, and it's why the membership is also a little bit open right now, but it'll be invitation only shortly. Our core values are trust, collaboration, connection, vision, curiosity, discovery, and empowerment. Basically, Moonshot House acts as a trusted layer to help the champions stay connected. It all started as a personal need of the founder, and in less than 3 months, over 200 executives have joined us from 26 major cities like New York, LA, Silicon Valley, Paris, London, Singapore, Germany, Tel Aviv. And I have been so honored to be able to be the moderator for these fireside chats, because there's nothing I like more than getting a chance to interview someone as a part of my job and then get to learn something today. So I introduced Moonshot House to Amilya Antonetti here, and she's our guest today. She is one of the most sought after human behavior experts and strategic advisors. Her proprietary Genius Key system emboldens companies by removing biases like gender, race, religion, and other factors that impact building a healthy, prosperous, and sustainable community within the business and its people. Amilya's national popularity began in the 1990s after discovering the life-threatening effects of cleaning products had on her infant son. She successfully founded Soapworks, which quickly became one of the fastest-growing privately owned all-natural household product companies in North America. She sold the company, now renamed Greenworks, which is an item all of us have in our kitchen, at least most of us do, and today is wholly owned division of Clorox. In 2019, Amilya was awarded Woman of the Decade Award from the Women's Economic Forum. She has had 9 companies, and I'm going to go over this list: construction, media, green products, restaurants, health and beauty aids, over-the-counter, pain products, franchising, data, like the list of diversity, Amilya, is astounding.
This means I have 80.
Yeah, but the success factor in this. So you have taken these all to multi-million dollar level, or $1 million at least, right?
Oh,
Yeah, easily. And so this is the thing. We have Amilya here. There are very few women in the world who have achieved this level of success. And how many of you have heard of her? That's the awful thing about it, is that she is a hidden genius. She is a hidden expert that we should all be tapping into, because her path can become our path. So Amilya, thank you for joining us today on Fireside Chat.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I was very excited about this. It's great. I love these type of collaborative events where people get to share and grow and learn.
Right. So I had the pleasure of getting to have an actual live lunch with Amilya, even in the midst of this pandemic. And the story you told about coming from an immigrant family and your immigrant mindset, I want to start there, because I think everyone needs to set that up. So you weren't born here in the US. You came over here at the age of, I think it was 11?
Yeah. And that view of, what this great country holds for us, the opportunity, it's just very different perspective than actually if you're born here. And so that is the cherry on the top. If you can get to America, then anything's possible. And so I'm very fortunate that my family took that step to get us here, and then the rest was up to us. And it was such a great opportunity, because we knew that if we worked hard, that we could literally create whatever future we wanted. And that work ethic is something that I consider a gift that comes through my lineage. You know, my father's father and father and father, whatever. Italians are known for being workhorses. And so,
Is that what
you know,
you were like working class family in
oh
Italy?
yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I think we were a few steps below working class family. I mean, we were just, we'll do anything, right? Anything to collectively figure out how we could just, stay here and really just find and discover those opportunities. But you start, within your own family, so, we did, lawn work and picked up garbage and, we put tar on roofs, in the middle of the summer, and anything that anybody else didn't want to do, one of us were like, we'll do it, because
I swear my grandfathers and my great uncles sound like they come from the same family. Like it is, I think we might be related somewhere back there because yeah, that's the thing. Like in the summer, they'd mow the lawns at the parks and rec. And in the winter, they'd be building brick walls and chimneys repair. Like they would do whatever it took.
and that is what you learn early on, right? It's just to get involved with something, even though there wasn't an immediate understanding of where it was going to lead to, right? It's through the work that makes the network work, right? So that the people that I first started babysitting for was, an insight from babysitting. I was asked to come do filing and Girl Friday work inside of their business. One of the houses where we maintained all of the lawn and closing up furniture and for the winter and bringing furniture out for the summer, whatever, that was an inroad because I was able to do intern work in accounting, right? So it's through work that you learn to find the people that you're going to end up networking with if you're paying attention. If your eyes and ears are open, one opportunity leads to another opportunity that leads to another opportunity. But opportunities don't come knocking on your door and go, ta-da, I'm here. You got to get out. You got to get engaged. You've got to go look. And it's always hidden underneath a not so pretty rock, right? It's not the shiny, sparkly things. The shiny, sparkly things are usually the ones that cost me money, not that made me wealth, right? And so
So
they're
you
hidden.
have all brothers, right?
Yes, I'm the only girl.
How did you compete? How did you find your way there?
Well, I think you learn, or the way I've always learned is what I'm not before I learned out what I was, right? So I quickly learned I wasn't a boy, right? That was like step one. My family being Italian, it was like dog pile, and then, like my whole brothers would climb, pound on top of me, and then like, oh, I broke 3 ribs, and so I realized early on that I wasn't as physical as they were. And as we started, again, young, I'm talking about 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, going out to try to figure out what we were going to do in the weekends, whether it was lawn work or whatever. I was following around to realize I didn't have the stamina or the strengths my brother did. Even though I wanted to, I had the heart, but I couldn't move the log like they could. I couldn't, pack and move rocks or, empty trucks. We did a lot of delivery stuff. I couldn't do it for as long as they did, and it wasn't because I didn't have the heart. I didn't physically have the ability, and I was young. And so I had to say, okay, well, clearly I don't have the physical strength they do or the endurance, but what do I have? And that led me to realize that my ability came into bidding the jobs correctly or more correctly than my brothers, and also being more aware of multiple streams of income. And what I mean by that is by a 9 or 10-year-old girl, what I understood is that when my brothers went to go do the yard work, my brothers would do things for free. So they would come out and go, hey, I know you're picking up all the leaves, but while you're here, can you move the wood pile? Or while you're here, can you do this? And my brothers would say yes. And I would go, oh, I'm happy to do that. That's $25. That's $10, right? I would add on to the work, or I would proactively say, hey, listen, we're here to pick up all the leaves, but while we're here, I also noticed that this, and this can all, would you like us to do that? It would be an extra X amount of dollars. And that's what I started to realize was my skill, was to identify opportunity to add on to what the yes already was. And then the other ability I had was in collections, meaning that when the work was over, my brothers were tired. And so they were eager to go home and shower and have a meal, especially since my family can cook. And I was more eager to go home with money. And so I'd be like, okay, so you owe me whatever it is, $35. And they're like, oh, I'll pay you tomorrow. And I'm like, I can't go home. You don't understand. I cannot go home And so my brothers did their work. You have to pay me. And there was this little girl, petrified, right? I was like, I can't go. And they were like, oh, wait. So I learned early on that the front and the back, or the bookends of business, is where wealth generation is made, right? If you bid it well and you can collect, there you go. It's in the middle. Right?
How many of you are listening to that out there and thinking about your business right now and how you could be improving from on those both sides? Because that truly is, this is, some of the foundations of good business that you learned at a really young age, intimately. And not just that, but you learned how to handle the people part of that.
That was the beginning of understanding, what could I do to change the outcome? Right? What can I do? Right? So I always say to myself, what can I have done differently to get a different outcome? And so from a young girl, what I learned what I could do differently is use the fact that I was young and I was a girl in a whole mess of boys, and use people's emotion to realize that they needed to pay me right now. Right? Or I could use my courage, right? I was going and I was knocking on doors saying, hey, do you need any yard work? Do you need babysitting? Do you need whatever? People are like, look at this little thing. There's the chutzpah on her, right? And I was like, they were like, well, of course, they would find something for me to do, right? Or I would go and say, if there's any, old clothes or donations, I would gather it in the neighborhood, and then I would haul it down because people didn't actually want to go that far to make the donation, right? That was before the trash bag ended up going, please put all your clothes in here. I physically would go find ways that I could make a little bit of money here and a little bit of money there to contribute to our family. That's the Italian mindset, is that all work to contribute to the overall good of the family. And so I wanted to contribute because I saw my brothers contributing. So I was really motivated by that positive energy, because it was like a party when we did well. And I was like, wait a minute, I want that recognition too. And I was like, well, I can use my mind because it's stronger than the endurance of my body. Wow. And then I didn't call it business then. I didn't, I didn't think that that's what I was doing, but I was learning. And then I applied that to my education, right? So as I was learning, I was like, okay, there's a lot of wasted time here all day. A lot of this stuff wasn't relevant then when I was in school. I was like, when am I going to use this, right? So I was really the type of student that was interested in what I could see that had a purpose, and I was not very interested in stuff that I was like, I could go to a library and get that, right? Now you can even Google it, right? But at the time, I was really about, what's the return on investment? If I'm going to spend time in this class, what are you going to do for me? And I really had that kind of attitude as a young girl, meaning I was not very favored in school at all. Because I'd be like, excuse me, I'm running because I had a construction business when I was in high school. I was running 500 and some odd guys, and I had a beeper. And so I'd be like, listen, I've got stuff to do. So what are you teaching today? And I'm like, okay, I'll be here when you're going to give the test. And they literally asked me to leave high school early. They're like, you do not belong here. And I was like, what? And they're like, you're just disruptive. So how about you just come in, we'll page you on days you need to take the test. We just don't want you here. And so I was alienated for my assertiveness at a very young age, but I felt like with business, I was doing something, right? So as a young girl, I was doing something, and there was an immediate impact that I could go home with, look how much money my brothers and I had made, and that was rewarded in my family. Now, during high school years where kids were talking about whatever, prom or this or whatever, I was trying to build a business because there was the attention that I was seeking that was coming from that. There was an immediate reaction. There was something that I could measure as I was growing in the construction business.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the construction business. Cause tough business, right? I had family and
don't know, right. See, that's the beauty of it. You don't know what you don't know. And that's the gift of entrepreneurism. And again, when I started, there was no such word as entrepreneur. I didn't know what the word was. I still, I'm sure I spell it wrong, right? It wasn't that. I was looking to stay here. I was looking to be validated to be as good as my neighbors. Remember, when you come from an immigrant mindset, you're seeking to be equal to your vision of what this American dream is, right? You're seeking it. And so you're seeking to gain those type of approvals, right? So from everything from speaking good English to understanding references and analogies that people would make. I would be like, I don't know what they're talking about. And they go, and I'm like, I
No.
actually don't know, because they just assume, right? So the storytelling, the myths, right, that people tell based on whatever their culture is, those myths are teaching, right? They're little teaching. But if you don't know the story, then you're immediately struggling to understand, well, what's the whole point of that? Why would a parent tell you that story? And so if you don't understand it, you're seeking to create your own. And that's really what I was doing. I was trying to fit in. I was trying to blend. I was trying to prove that I belonged here. That's emotionally what was going on. Now, what you see is the achievement, but that's really not what I was doing. I wasn't like, oh, what I want to do is start a construction company. What I was like, okay, what do most Italians know how to do? Build things. we build, we create. We're really,
We
we're
make
good.
food.
Yeah, so I was in construction, no shocker. Restaurants, no shocker. But I was just doing what I already had seen mimicked in my own house. What I did was I applied my talent, which is bidding for it and collecting for it. But I wasn't really going, oh, I'm starting a business. That's what happened. That was the default of what was going on. And then I realized that this knowledge that I was gaining actually became a lock that I could utilize, because somewhere around maybe my sophomore, junior year in high school, kids started talking about going to college. And I was like, well, nobody's paying for me to go to college. Like, that wasn't going to happen, right? That was impossible. That was something, that wasn't going to be an opportunity for me. And so I was like, okay, well, I still want to be successful. So what's the back door? What's the back door to success? And the back door to success was entrepreneurism. And I was like, well, wait a minute. I think I'm kind of already doing that. And so I was like, okay, how do I do it bigger?
Well, you told a story at lunch about how you evaluated what was going on the construction sites in the company you were working with and the older guy who owned it. And I think that, that's something that's really so telling about how you narrowed in on where profit was made, on where, and you just, as you talked about the story about your brothers, you narrowed in on the things you could affect and the things that made money. And you said, I can just go for that and work on that, and it's going to work out. Was that a conscious thing? Was it just an instinctual thing?
It's part, I believe everybody has their genius, right? Everybody has the thing that they've been doing all along. And then the gift is to learn the multiple ways to make money. So part of my gift is my perspective, right? I've always been the girl that saw something different than what the masses did, right? So everybody else looks outside and looks and they say, oh, the sky is blue. And I'll be the one that notices, well, what's that spot that what's that thing? And I'd be curious about that to then locate that, oh, it's not a star, it's actually a planet, right? So my perspective has always been off. It's what made me a very odd duck. It's also what made me not very popular in school, because people were like, ooh, she's different, right? And I was different because my experience was different. My thoughts were different. My whole goals, my reward system was very different. And because I wasn't in a home where there was a lot of micromanaging going on, like my parents didn't really expect much from me. Remember the old Italian upbringing, they were just hoping that I would shut my mouth long enough and somebody would want to come marry me. And just, my father kept saying, if you would be more quiet, maybe somebody would like you. And I'm like, yeah, but, I'd have an opinion. And so that wasn't my goal for myself, so I didn't see myself that way. And I was so curious about everything, and I still am. I mean, even today, when people go, wow, you've been doing this for such a long time, you don't seem like you're in your 50s. And I'm like, it's because I'm so curious. I'm curious about everything. I ask a lot of questions. I'm fascinated with how people come to their conclusions. And that has been something that I've been obsessed with. And I've learned to create businesses based on that interest for self-serving, because I'm so curious. I want to be able to have a business that feeds that need that I have. Why and how come and what makes it tick, and is there a better way to do it, and what about a healthier environment for people, and how do people thrive? All of those questions run through my head all the time.
Yeah, you
And
don't
that's
seem like the kind of person who can just sit back and go, "Oh, well, that's what it is." Like it's all, it's the way it is. It
no,
doesn't seem like that's you.
no. But what you have to understand is with that comes a consequence, right? I was a child who was reprimanded and tried to stop many times, right? Please be quiet. Just sit in the back. Just stop interfering. That is the message that the world kept giving me. When I looked at something, I would say, well, I think there's a better way. That I failed the class because I didn't do it the way they asked me to do it. But in not doing it that way is what led me to innovation and then learning about IP and so on and so forth, right? Because I see another solution so naturally in my head. It really does not matter what scenario you give me. And after 35 years being in business, I hear this often. When you give me the scenario and I go, oh, here's what I see, people always go, say that again? Because I'm going to lead you to a different perspective on how to solve that problem, because I don't see problems. I really don't see a problem. It very natural to me. I go, well, here's the obvious other option. My kids
Right.
literally call me Captain Obvious. So I will, and the minute I say it, people go, well, that seems so simple. So my brain works that way.
Goes right to that. This is really interesting, Amelia. I want to, because, we keep hearing these, I'm going to call it like these ideas that we need to create a more diverse board of directors. We need to have, cognitive diversity is the way that we're doing it. But we really also forget that some of that comes from cultural and upbringing and background diversity as well. That's what gives us that different perspective on the world. And we don't really have a way, as you're starting up a company, and the sort of the model by which most startups move into the accelerators and then move into the growth, that they tend to be very homogeneous in their perspective.
Well, that's because that's what you're conditioned to do as a child, right? So in order for you, and again, I'm talking about the young you, to feel safe and secure, you stay amongst your own, right? Your family say, stay close to home, stay in the subdivision, only meet children that we know their parents, right? This is part of the trajectory of how we come to be, right? And so we go through stages of development. And during these stages of development, subconsciously what we learn is that I am safe if I stay within my own kind. Now, that isn't what's verbally being said, but that is what experientially is being said, right? Not many people go and start playing in a neighborhood that's 5 or 6 neighborhoods over that absolutely nobody there. And so this conditioning, right, that happens as a child manifests itself through high school, and then normally it also follows into your college, right? There's a lot of statistics that say that with the friends that you've had when you're in your mid-20s, that you're most likely to have that same friend group for the rest of your life. Well, I look at that going, oh my God.
Me too. I think that's not my experience as well. But then again, you just said that, and my husband has his phone call that he has had with his buddies all through the pandemic. They have a Wednesday night phone call, and they've known each other since they were in grammar school. I can't even remember what grammar school I went to. I went to so many, but that's his experience.
Right? See, we're odd ducks. Saying that too. I've moved 35 times in my life, and I think that that's normal. That's my perspective, right? So when you start to study behavior and how behavior has an impact on business and on scale and on wealth generation and your value drivers and so on. So when you start to take a look at that, behavior plays a huge role on it, right? And so it's what your normal is, right? And so you have to remember what your normal is somebody else's hell, right? And so when we use words like, well, I would like to have a more diversified board, for example, right? Well, you got to remember diversity means something to different people, right? And so when you listen to somebody then to describe what they mean by a certain word, like a bucketing word, it's usually nothing like what you think. And so this is where we haven't really learned the skills, and society is getting worse, not better, about taking this childlike view and expanding upon it. How do I start welcoming in different types of thought and different types of perspective, regardless of its packaging, so that I can continue my curiosity to go, well, that's interesting. Why do you think that way? Why do you believe that way? What do you think the outcome of what's coming next? And those conversations are rich and robust. But that in that richness of conversation, there's going to be conflict, right?
Right.
So you and
And
I,
that's what I think a lot of people are afraid of, right?
but brilliance is born in conflict. This is the craziness, right? The only way to brilliance is through conflict. Now it has to be healthy conflict, but if you just take a look around, we don't know how to do it, right? People do not know how to have a conversation that triggers conflict, which is through curiosity, right? Conflict for me to go, oh my God, that's so fast. Why do you think of that? Not that, oh my gosh, how offensive. I don't have the reaction of something's offensive. My reaction always, that is so fascinating. That is so curious to me. Why do you believe that? How did you come to think that this was a good idea? Like, what do you think the outcome is going to be when you start to get to listen to somebody, what they think is happening next? I mean, it's even more fascinating when you talk to a really young person and then you go, oh, that's interesting. So then what happens? And then what happens? And then what happens? And what happens is, when the experience gives you the ability to continue that conversation longer. What happens, and then what happens, and then what happens, and what happens. Like, the older you are, the more you have the ability to understand the consequences or the outcome of action. But the younger you are, you're like, well, this is what's going to happen. And then you go, and then what? And they go, well, what do you mean? I'm like,
Yeah. Well, this stops
what
there, right?
after that, right? Because you're young, right? And that's the beauty of it. And that's where the wisdom needs to come in. Where young and old need to come together because we need each other, right?
We were talking about that a little bit earlier. We were talking about the fact that that's what's missing in sort of these influencer advisors out in the world, right? The influencer advisors are missing actual experience, actual deep knowledge. And so they're out there influencing without those two things together at that same moment.
And more importantly, not connected to the responsibility.
The accountability and responsibility, you're right.
Part of being an elder or wise, right, with wisdom, comes the acceptance of the responsibility with that wisdom. Now, wisdom can be used many, 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 many different ways. And you don't have control over how it's used. You have influence, but not control. And so that also deepens your connection with that responsibility. If I say this, some people are going to use it for good, but there will be somebody out there that's going to do something that will be a negative vibration or could be perceived as harmful, right? And so you have to have the relationship with the responsibility of the knowledge that you're exchanging. And that is what's missing, is that there's not the deeper understanding of the responsibility of the influence, because we didn't understand it when it came to be. We didn't believe in the power of the internet. We didn't believe in the power of social media. We didn't believe in a lot of things we didn't give credence to, that it was actually going to be sticky enough to change the trajectory of our younger people. Right. And it has. And we see that if you take a look at a lot of the science, that what it's doing now to the brain, what that actually means in building of relationships, what's real and what's not real. Right?
Yeah. For those of you who haven't watched The Social Dilemma, go on out and see that. I would say that they were actually being really nice about the effect, because they still all have to work in the broadcasting and social media industries themselves. So they were being a little tame, but it really is eye-opening. And
but you also have to remember, you've got to come to it very objectively. It's not for us to say it's good or bad or better or worse. That's not our position. Our position is to understand what is. It's real. It's here. It's now. to understand it and then be able to say, now that I have an understanding, a sense of understanding from my perspective, how do I then influence it for the betterment of all, right? The
Right.
job of a CEO, the role of the CEO is to serve its people. That's your job, to serve them to the best of your ability and to have faith that your people will then serve your clients and your customers in the same manner that you serve them. And in serving those clients will then in turn serve the community, right? Not the culture, the community of where you're connected with your core values and the trajectory of that industry. And that industry or that community will then in turn serve the business. And that business then serves, and it becomes a cycle. What happens is, because so much has changed, right? And we try to play checkers and skip over our people and be focused on our products and services, right? The world doesn't work that way. Energetically, it's impossible. The energy that you put into your people is the energy that will go directly into your clients' products and services, will go directly into the community, and you'll have that cause and
So we're
effect.
talking about ripples and impact, and that's what you're looking for. And, this is, I want to get a little bit to your definition, because we were talking about definition of cognitive diversity and diversity before, but let's get into your definition of success, because you've had so many companies, and arguably you could go, oh, this one made the most money, so it was the most successful. But I somehow think that your definition of success is very different, Amilya. So what is your definition of success, and which of the companies and projects you've worked on defines that best?
Right, and so that's a great question, right? So I will definitely say that there's the companies that when I was running them, because I believed that money and the exit, right, the valuation of the company was how I was measuring success, because I was like, okay, if I could get to this level, all of these other things were going to happen in my life, right? That was my false belief. Oh, when I have this, then X, Y, and Z will also come in place. What I found out is when I got to those levels, I looked around, I was like, okay, A, I don't like any of these people here, and B, I'm by myself. I'm alone, right? And so I'm very honest to say that in the climb to build Soapworks specifically, it cost me my marriage. It cost me my marriage, and it cost me a very unique relationship with my eldest child. I don't judge that as good or bad. It is just what it was. I was focused on the business, and then everything else came afterwards, because my belief was that if I grew the business and I could exit the business and I could then have that financial stability, I can then handle everything else afterwards. If I have this, I can take care of those things later, without realizing, well, that was a cute story, not in fact true for me. And in that discovery, I then had to really examine, well, what does success mean in my language? Which then really baffled me. And I find it fascinating with a lot of my clients when I say to my clients, tell me what a perfect day is, an absolute perfect day. And people go, well, I would get more sleep. I would hang on the beach. I would be surfing all day. And I'm like, yeah, that's not what I mean. A perfect day, from the moment you open up your eyes, what happens? And then what happens? And then what happens? And then what happens? And then what happens? Until you get to the end of the day. What is that perfect day? And 99% of people I ask that question to cannot answer it. So if you can't answer what a perfect day is, how can I give it to you?
Right.
How can I give it to you as your CEO? How can I give it to you as your lover? How can I give it to you as your partner? How can I give that to you as your parent? How can I give it to you if I don't even understand what your perfect day is to you? And that is what started me to uncover how I was going to provide a community for my team by really understanding, who are they? What has value to them? Why does it have value to them? What is the meaning in the place of that in their life? And I started doing that with games. I had played a game in my company, which was called, I was obsessed with Winnie the Pooh. So I put honey pots all over my company. And I said, when you're not here, tell me what you're doing. And people are like, what? I'm like, just tell me what you're doing. And so people put in the honey pot that they were changing the tires on their car, and they were getting oil changes, and they were doing laundry, and they were going shopping, and all these kind of honeydews. And I was like, okay, it's my responsibility as a CEO to remove all the honeydews. And so people are like, what do you mean? I'm like, when you're not here, I just want you to be an amazing, incredible parent, wife, husband, whatever. But I don't want you to be doing any honeydews. I want that time to be the time of repair and recoup. And that
Oh,
was my goal. And
how many of you want to come to work for Amilya now?
well, I mean, more importantly, set it up in your own environment, right? To come work for me doesn't change the trajectory of business, but for you to understand how you take those tools into your own life, even if you do it for your own family, that's what is going to have the perpetual effect of real change. Because when you understand how somebody, why, what has meaning to them, and you marry it with work, right? The outcome of a business, the work, and you put those two together, you create an entirely different relationship that's healthy, that's supportive, that is infused with growth and innovation because it's no longer adversarial. So you can't go in two directions at the same time. It's impossible. And so this model of the business is going to go this way, and then afterwards, I'm going to live this life. I'm going to do this and that. No, so you can't go in two directions. And so until business gets the skills and the operating system to work in synergy with their people, it will always be an adversarial environment.
So it sounds like we're going to start talking about your new business, and I want to get there, but I have a question in the chat that I'd like to share with you. So David is asking, what was your worst experience when you built Soapworks, and how did you deal with it?
Ooh, I had lots of those. I think that, and I'll answer this from an emotional question because that's what comes up to me first. So I love finding diamonds in the rough. I love finding people's genius and bring them within the company and giving them an opportunity. And so I found an individual that was definitely working in not his highest and best use and brought him into the company, ended up bringing not only him, his family, his kids into this country. What I thought my perspectives was a life beyond imagine. And he stole over $1 million from me. Ugh. And I was heartbroken. It wasn't the money. I was like, I don't understand why you would. I was so hurt. I couldn't understand why he would steal from me of all people. Because I was like, listen, I would have given you the money. This is what I don't understand. I would have given it to you. And his perspective was he deserved it. Mm. And I was just baffled. And I felt betrayed. I felt lied to. It sent me reeling. And so that memory really, really drove home that there was a part of the business model for me that must have been broken. And to really, really understand the psyche of the team around me, because it is a relationship of trust. You're going to trust me I'm going to lead you to a desired destination that we all agree that this is where we're going. And in turn, I have to be able to trust you. And so I will say that was definitely one of those mile markers that I will say was the worst experience. But I will say that it became a fundamental piece of the equation when I said to myself, what am I going to do differently? As I knew that the people operating system inside of a business had to change.
Right. Right. Well, let's talk a little bit about how you've built the Genius Key, because obviously this is taking lots of these learnings and these hard days that you've had at other companies, and you've turned it into a path and a model by which we can pull team together and tap into what's great about everybody's genius and combine them together and creating this, I'm going to call it a melting pot, right? A melting pot that is headed towards a great outcome together, a better outcome than they might have alone. So how did you come up with this and get this started?
So, I mean, it was a myriad of things that came to be, right? So, I started looking at data that basically was saying that, 80% of people who have a degree don't work in that degree. I was like, well, boy, that seems like a big waste of time, right? I'm like, okay, so you went to school to be a lawyer, but you're an artist, right? I was like, okay, this doesn't make any sense to me. How could people not be practicing what they've spent time learning? So that was one of those little odd moments that kept me curious. And then I started looking at, reports over the last decades about how unhappy people are at work. Unhappy with their boss, unhappy with their job, and they're just unhappy. And I was like, well, that's fascinating. I mean, most of the leaders that I've ever met, really wanted to please their people. And yet they're like, the people that work for me, why they can't be more like me. And I was like, well, I can tell you that. I answer it quickly. But yet when I talk to their people, they're like, my boss doesn't see me, hear me, or even understand me. And I was like, where's this gap coming from? And I started to realize that the model that maybe worked a long time ago doesn't serve us now. It definitely doesn't serve our society today and our lifestyles, right? That need to be more of one. And so I was like, okay, we have to reinvent how the people operating system and the workload work together. And more importantly, what I know for a fact as a behaviorist is that it does not matter how much data I show you that says, for example, that women are as good as numbers as men are. I can show you that data all day long. But if your last experience shows you that we're not, you don't believe me. So the way the subconscious works is it only believes its last best or its last worst experience. That's your belief system. So the only way I'm going to change your mind is if I give you another experience that is in conflict with what you already believe. But our systems inside of a business are not set up that way. So if you come in to a business because the only job that was open was in admin, right? So you're like, listen, I'm gonna get my foot in the door. I'm just gonna take this admin job. I really wanna be in marketing, but I'm just gonna get my foot in the door, right? Because that's what we tell you. Well, statistics will tell you that if you get into admin, the chances of you getting into any other lane is slim and none, right? So it's broken. It's absolutely broken. I can't see your genius. And so I was like, let me just throw the whole system away. And what is it that I'm really trying to achieve? Well, as a CEO and a business owner, what I'm really trying to achieve is this overarching goal or destination that I'd like to achieve in the overall year, quarter by quarter. That's really what the business owner is trying to do. These value drivers, these measurables, this is the destination.
These outcomes, let's, you know.
So we turned all of that work into genius keys, right? There takes a certain type of genius to create that desired outcome. And at the same time, we took all the people and we also ran them through the matrix so we can understand what is your genius key? What keys did you come here with naturally? And what keys did you pick up along the way? So now what happens is what the system does is it sends you and it goes, hey, there are 9 projects that match your genius. And you're like, oh, this is interesting. And you get to see all the projects within the entire corporate umbrella that match your genius. And then you go, okay, because you're curious, this one has 8 people, this one has 16 people, this one has 25 people. This project is pinging me because they're looking for my strategy key that I have. This one here is looking for my right order, right organization key. This one's looking for my innovation key. Now I know why I was asked to come onto this team to begin with, which I will tell you, most people that I interview, when I go, why are you working on the project? They're like, because my boss gave it to me. That's not it.
Yeah.
Right? But now I know why I was engaged. And I also know the role that I need to play on this project. And I know how long the project is. So this is, let's say, again, 4-week project. They need me to be the strategist on this team. Everybody on the team knows that I'm bringing in the strategy key. So I don't have to try to be all things to all people. I'm clearly understanding what my role is on this specific assignment. But it also allows my teammates to experience me with this key.
So for some of you out there, I wanted to stop you right there for a second, Amelia. For some of you out there whose experience has only been on the entrepreneurial side, you may not really have this vision yet for what it looks like to be within a corporate structure like that and have projects put in front of you. For those of you who maybe studied the Amazon model or building your company towards that, you get that idea of how that works and you redeploy people into projects and, you know, they basically get fired and then they have to find something new, right? So I've worked in and out of house, so I have a view of what that looks like. And so some of you may not have that perspective but when you think about it, but it is critical to you building a company that's bigger as you head into out of solopreneurship and into building this bigger company with your startups and with whatever your venture is that you're working on.
And even as a solo entrepreneur, wouldn't it be helpful to know which of the projects you should be handing off first? Right? So you get to take a look at your keys and you get to look at where your highest and best use are. And it will tell you that the risk factor for me, for example, doing a performa, I'm most likely going to be making an error in that. Can I do it? Sure. Is it going to be as strong that somebody has that natural genius? No. So that's one of the first projects that I'm going to bring a teammate in to champion so that they lead and I follow, because that's an area of my weakness. But other project that I am a genius on, right? So I'm going to hold on to setting the strategy for projects because I'm very, very good at it, right? But I'm going to offload those other things. So it gives you the insight of the order in which you should be welcoming in other people to be helping you with the individual task. And entrepreneurs struggle to that, right? They want to do everything and they have no idea what to hand off, right? Because they feel like they can do everything. But wouldn't you want to know a gauge on where you'll scale and where you won't scale? So it's just taking this, whether you're 2 people in your company or you're 200,000 people in the company, it's taking the overall work and assigning it to the highest likelihood of success. And that's basically the analogy. You have a key that unlocks the success of this project. Now, what I will tell you that as you look at those different projects and you're like, okay, 3 months, 2 months, whatever, it's agnostic. Until you click, yes, I'm interested, I don't know that you're a white female, and I don't care. Because as a CEO, all I know is you got a key for my success. I don't care if you're black, white, yellow, green. I don't care what your religion is. I don't care if you went to Wharton. I don't care if you never went to school at all. All I know is you got a key that unlocks the project. And that's all it should matter. But now the system is allowing people to start to learn, curiosity-wise, learn their next best experience to go, wow, I thought she was an admin. I had no idea she had the ability to do strategy. I had no idea she had the ability to do innovation. I had no idea. It's allowing us to truly learn, because instinctually, because what I explained to you before about your childhood, you're not going to seek a total stranger who has nothing to do, like nothing you identify with, and you're going to sit down and go, oh, let me get to know you. It doesn't work that way. You need something.
Well, I find this really interesting. So I have a staff of 60. And prior to this, I had multiple companies with different, and I think the biggest resistance that I found was when I would see the genius in someone, because when you're nimble and you're small and you just need people to like there's a job over here, and even though I hired you as an admin assistant, I think you could do this. A lot of times that person holds themselves back. And so there also is that built into your model of now they go through this and they start to believe in their own ability, which you might have seen a little inkling of, but they now believe in their own ability to do that. Where a lot of times I've asked them and they go, no, that's not me.
Because it's very hard for us to see our own reflection, right? It's very hard to see and to give value to something that we don't struggle to do with at all, right? The thing that comes so easy to us, it's hard to believe that somebody else actually can't do that same thing, right? It takes time in the trenches. I mean, if you would have talked to my 20 some odd younger yourself and said, oh, this crazy perspective that you have, Amilya, that you immediately be able to see a solution to problem, is it valuable? I'd be like, no, I'm getting sent to the back of the class. I'm going down there. No, I'm getting punished for it, right? So you don't see it, right? And if somebody doesn't take the time to say, okay, here's your genius and here's how it applies to the finance industry, the insurance industry, the healthcare industry, the consumer good industry, to retail, to online, and somebody doesn't explain to you how that genius has an impact on the different industries, how would you know?
Right.
And then if you have another interest, right? So the dashboard also says, hey, listen, I get all this stuff for strategy. I really wanted to be in human resources. You may believe that. And so, okay, if you really want to be in human resources, right, self-driven, I would say it tells you here's the key that you need to pick up so that you get more projects in human resources. So there's no more of you stood in my way, you have some biases, you held me back. It's all you take as much work as you want or as little work as you want. You can pick up a project, you can gallivant around the world for the next 90 days, come back and pick up another project. It doesn't matter to the company. The company just wants, here's the work, pick it up, get it done, move on, here's your reward, next project. And so now,
Amilya, just for all of you listening out there, Amilya's being like, she has not really explained how amazing the company is right now. You've got clients like Berkshire Hathaway working within the program and utilizing it. So she's a little bit farther than startup stage on this. So she's making it sound like, oh, it's just software, oh, it's just, no, it's not that at all. It's quite advanced and already being in advanced testing with some companies that are looking at this going, this is going to be really valuable for our future growth.
It's the new people operating system. It's how people will operate together for genius. And it answers today's marketplace on how, right? You may have the best intentions. You may want to remove your biases. You may want to show up differently with people. That's easier said than done, right? Because it's hard to fight your survival instinct if you have a belief system that, well, if I trust you, Amelia, with my finances, the whole thing, like your beliefs are your beliefs. And the only way to do that is by creating these different experiences so that you can learn and grow. We just currently don't have it. But the big universal reset, right? So you have to remember where we were, right? So just a short time ago, our society was like, I hate my neighbor, I hate my job, I hate commuting, my people on my team are a pain in the ass, right? All we cared about is we hated everything. We didn't want to go to work. It was all right. And now the universe said, okay, you hate everybody? You're all quarantined to your home now. Now what are people saying? Oh my gosh, I would do anything, right, just to get out and go to dinner. I would do anything just to go and have the coffee with the person I just said 4 months ago I hated. Right now we're starved, right, for connection. Well, isn't that funny? What happened, right? Because our last best experience or last worst experience. So now our experience is the isolation because we removed the connection. Well, now we have an amazing opportunity to learn how to connect again better than we did before. So how are we going to connect with others better? How can I see you, hear you, experience you, and value who you are if I'm going to go use the old tools? Because the old tools got us to, I hate everything.
Right.
So how do we come out
so
of it?
This is going to be complete reinvention. So I've got a question in the chat and I want to kind of, Alex, I'm going to ask it, but in a little slightly different way. He says, what is your recommendation for entrepreneurs and what was the hardest decision you made in your startup? And what I want to preface that with is, I heard you say at one point that you're not the big visionary. And that's because Michael Gordon, who we met in the last, because he was our last Fireside Chat, and everybody knows what a big visionary he is, right? And so you said, I'm not the visionary. Yet, you have managed to be ahead of trend or on trend for every single company and every single thing that you've done in the past 35 years. So there's got to be some vision in there. But at some point, you probably had to make a hard early decision that this was worth pursuing. And that takes a lot of vision. So where was that point for you? And did you consciously make it? Did you just let your heart, your soul make that decision? How did you do that?
So that's a two-part question. So the
Yes.
first of all, I'm a huge fan of Michael's, and I'm beyond honored that he accepted to be on our board, right? And he truly is a visionary. I am not a visionary. I'm an executor, right? So when I see a problem, I execute by brute force, and I learn and I pivot along the way because I don't see the actual vision. Versus a visionary, truly, without any data set, sees a vision. They don't necessarily see all the steps on how to get there. They see the ultimate vision. That would be an Elon Musk, right? He sees a vision of we are going and we are living in space. He can see it in full color of what it is that we're actually doing. Now, if you asked him step by step on how we're going to get there, he has no idea, but he knows it's doable, right? And so the visionaries are Beethoven, right? If you look at Beethoven, how did you learn to write? I heard the music. What do you mean you heard the music? He heard the music, he wrote it down. That's a visionary, right? That is not what Amilya is at all, right? I am a behaviorist who see problems and I see a better way and I create processes, products, something tactical for somebody to use to get from where they are to where they want to be. I am driven to execute on something, right? I'm driven by this need of movement and change with force, not necessarily the other way around. And so again, some of these words get defined a certain way and then people call themselves a visionary, and it's not actually what it is if you go into the microcosms of actually what they're actually doing by action. And so I surround myself with visionaries because they help me pull my head up out of the weeds to see the bigger picture, right? Because I will get into problem solving mode where I'm solving 1,000,001 different little problems because I can, where a visionary would go, but Amilya, your main goal is this one thing. Oh yeah, right. So I need to surround myself with the other types of geniuses to do the greatest overall scale and impact. And so you have to be very careful on who you put in those roles, depending on what your outcome is. So
So
that's one.
that sounds like that was a tough decision early on. It's like, when do you bring that in? When in your startup stage do you say, if I don't have that, I'm not going to be as successful because I might go down a rabbit hole.
But as a human, you need that. It's not just about being a business owner, right?
Yeah.
If you surround yourself with people exactly like you're limiting your growth as a individual. Remember, the job of a CEO is to focus on his people. Well, the only way I can focus on my people is if I can be the best Amelia I can be. Well, that means don't get stuck in my own Kool-Aid drinking, right? I'm a work in process. My goal is to continue to look at my reflection. How can I show up better? What can I learn more about myself? How do I become a better individual? How do I have a better impact on my family, my community, my state, my country, the world? And so in discovery is where you then get the energetic fuel to then focus that somewhere for change. And so that's why great leaders are always spending time in self-discovery. And as an entrepreneur, what you have to realize is that you're always in development. That as much as you think you know, you don't know. Right?
Well, lucky for us, a lot of entrepreneurs like to be in that stage. So we're really good in that. So what you're hearing here are something she calls them Amelia-isms. You've heard quite a few of them today. How can we get more Amelia-isms? How can we follow you? How can we find you out there and get more Amelia?
More Amelia. Well, I'm a collaborative, right? So I like to learn as much as I like to share. And so if you can spell my first name, you can find me anywhere. So anywhere across any of the social channels, Amelia.com. You can go to geniuskey.com if you'd like. You can, I love dialogue back and forth, especially with, my colleagues and other entrepreneurs, because we're in this together, right? As we come back from this reset, the only way we're going to reset stronger and better than we were before is if we collaborate. There is no solo in success. So as much as I may have spent a lot of time doing what I'm doing, without you, the other individuals, right, I won't scale, and neither will you. So it is collaborative in order to be able to say, let's create a better work environment for ourselves, for employees, for future leaders, for the children that we're trying to raise. There's just so much that we can be doing better as a society.
Oh, I love that. And you've got big heart exit plans. You've got big heart outcome for your Genius Key. I just took it this morning, all of you out there. Go ahead and go to geniuskey.com. It's great. It was really self-reflective in just the way that you passed the statements and all of that, and thinking about what I would think about when I was 3 and 5 and as I got older. So, so interesting to see some patterns in yourself just as you do it. And then you get to have a wonderful conversation to decode it. Now, doesn't that sound fascinating as well? So definitely want you to do that. Now, you are donating something to our Moonshot House Museum, and that is the Genius Key with some future things that are coming up. Tell us just quickly about that.
Yes. So we'd love to put the Genius Key in the museum. I think that's such an honor. And so in next year, 2021, we are creating those tokens, the actual keys for us to be able to share, not only with our teams and our employees, but also with family and friends, so that I can create a legacy piece that I can pass on, for example, a bracelet or a necklace that shows you the keys I came with and the keys that I earned along the way and what those lessons are, so that I can pass on that legacy piece. Same thing too for our genius gentlemen, so that they would have those keys either in cufflinks or tie tacks and other bracelets, masculine bracelets, so you can share your life's work, so that as the next generation comes up, that they realize that every step towards success has a shadow and light side to that key. With every blessing, there's a curse. And that wisdom is missing from our society. We hear people say, I want this and I want this, whatever. And I'm like, you do realize that with that want, this is what you're going to go through the shadow part of it, right? Through bravery, you find courage, but there's no courage without bravery. Right? In vulnerability, of being vulnerable as a leader, is what also sets us up the platform to build some of the most incredible teammates. And that understanding of the yin and yang is something that I wanted to be able to show people, to say that there's, you may say, yes, I've been successful, but I will tell you, none of it came easily. And I'm still developing now as a human so that I can be the best that I can possibly be.
Well,
as
Erin has put in a request for cufflinks in the chat there, so we know where your priorities should lie. Amilya,
earn them for sure.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's just been absolutely fascinating. I'm sure that others might want to rewind and watch this again as we post this up. And remember that you can watch all of these in the Moonshot House app, and you can follow along and connect up with others and start to have a chat about, your genius key as you work forward. So thank you again, Amilya. Really appreciate it. And for those of you who are still here and I know you're about to run out the door or run to the next Zoom, but I just want to remind you all that we have the future of entrepreneurship at schools, which I think is extremely important right now as we're talking about reinventing education. That panel discussion will happen on October 15th at 1 p.m. Pacific time. And we've got on November 12th, the Plug and Play founder, Rahim Amidi, will be my next Moonshot House Fireside Chat guest. And I think we're going to do it live. Wouldn't that be exciting? I think I'm going to go up to LA and sit side by side with him for a change. So as things open up, we're going to practice that here as well. So thank you everyone for being here today. And thank you, Amilya Antonetti, for joining us.
My pleasure.